Hey there, listeners. Welcome to another wonderful episode of the Leadership is Changing podcast. I had a great interview with a lady called Laura Barnard. And Laura is a person that's making an impact. In fact, that's the name of the episode, the high-end impact leader. The discussion was awesome. Now, Laura has done so many things. She's an author, international keynote speaker, trainer, and business advisor. She's the author of a book called The Impact Engine. In 2021, she was the World PMO Influencer of the Year. She's the founder and CEO of an organization called PMO Strategies. And she's the host of a podcast called PMO Strategies. And she's the host of Impact Summit. She's also the co-founder of International PMO Day. And she's the co-founder and president of Project Management for Change. It's a not-for-profit organization. Now, we had a great conversation. The ability to influence, to create change was one of the comments or points we talked about. Be a leader by the way you operate and lead people on the journey. A fantastic conversation. I can't wait for you to get into the episode. So sit back and enjoy.
Welcome to Leadership is Changing. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change. This is taking your leadership to another level by finding the balance between executive excellence and personal well-being through stories that inspire real change. It's time to adapt in our fast-moving world when leadership is changing with your host, Dennis Giannoutsas.
Hey there, listeners. Welcome to another wonderful episode of the Leadership is Changing podcast. Great to have you here with us. I have an awesome guest with me today. Her name is Laura Barnard. Laura, a massive welcome to you.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here.
Excellent. Now, whereabouts in the world are you today?
Well, today it's beautiful, sunny Fort Lauderdale, Florida in the US. But you never know, especially during hurricane season, what the weather's going to be like.
Yeah, and hurricane season for you is not too good of late. A lot of damage in the area and that, but I think where you are, everything's been okay.
So far, so good.
Yeah.
Let's see how the rest of the hurricane season goes.
Yeah, you've had a massive summer. You've had a great summer.
Oh yeah, it's been lovely. How's the weather down there?
Well, it's now we're going into spring because we've had winter, right? We're the
Right,
opposite. Yeah,
right,
so we're
exactly.
looking forward to it. So it's getting lighter. We've just moved to daylight saving, so it's changing a lot as well. Now, Laura, I've given an introduction to the audience or the listeners about you. Now, I understand that you own an organization called PMO Strategies. You're an
hmm
author, international keynote speaker, trainer, and business advisor. But what I would love you to do is share a little bit more about your background.
Oh, sure. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And thank you so much for having me. Well, I actually accidentally ended up in the field that I'm in today because when I was in high school trying to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up, I knew I was good at math and I knew computers were the future. So I found myself in computer science. I didn't even have a computer at home at the time. So that was really taking a big leap. But I figured computers were going to be the way of the future. And so I said, you know what? I'll give it a try. Turns out I end up at one of the hardest colleges, Virginia Tech. And I was one of four women in my graduating class for computer science, which was back a long time ago. Let's say it was before Google was Google. So it was quite some time ago. And the first project I worked on that really helped me fall in love with change was all about helping the graduate students, our university, do their theses and dissertations online for this new thing that was coming called the World Wide Web. So I guess that kind of dates me, if you will. And I just fell in love with the change and bringing people through change and seeing all the angry stakeholders that now couldn't graduate until they met this goal and finding ways to help people get comfortable with change, bring them through the process, and really get excited. And so I found my way into more of technology leadership. And then I was the one that could translate between the business and the tech speak. So I usually ended up being the one that would grab the whiteboard marker, go up to the whiteboard and say, okay, let's figure out how to solve the problem. And it turns out there's a field called project management where that's what they do for a living. So I ended up in project management. And then in the middle of the dot-com craziness in the 90s, I was tapped on the shoulder and said, "Hey, we need you to make sure that all of these projects happen, that the project people know how to do what they're doing, and that we can get these projects implemented faster with a higher return on investment." And it turns out that doing that was setting up a PMO. So in 1999, I got the chance to build my first PMO and fell in love. And I've been doing PMOs and business transformation ever since. And after about 15 years inside organizations doing that, I found that what I had learned mostly the hard way was new to the people that were coming behind me in these roles called PMO and business transformation. And I kept finding myself saying, no, 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 don't do that. That's why your stakeholders are running in the other direction. Do this instead. And when you do, it'll work. And then the light bulbs would go off. And I just kept saying, gosh, I really wish I had me when I was you. And that got me thinking that maybe there was something that I needed to share with others. And if I could make it easier than it was for me, for those that came after me, then I would be in heaven. So about 11 years ago, I started my company, and that's what I do is I help organizations and the people in them accelerate the delivery of their strategy.
That's brilliant, brilliant background too. Very similar backgrounds, actually, you and I,
Cool.
in technology and so forth. And PMO, for those listeners who don't know what that is, Project Management Office is, I think that's what it is, right?
Well, it depends, which is the funny part, right? So it could be a project management office, a program, a portfolio, even a product management office, which usually the product people think, oh, we don't do project management. Sure, you do, right? So it really just depends on who you ask, but it's the function, regardless of what you call it. And many of our executives don't even call it a PMO. They'll call it their business transformation office or even a strategy delivery office
Right.
because that's the thing is that it really shouldn't be named by the people in it, it should be named by the customers of it, and so when you ask your executives to name this organization, they usually don't say PMO, they explain what it is they're trying to accomplish, which for all of them is accelerating the delivery of their strategy. So that's what we end up calling it a lot. It has nothing to do with PMO, but it helps when people are trying to find us because many people think their PMOs are broken, and so that's what we help fix.
And I love what you said before about translating between technology or the tech space and the business side, because
Mhm.
I think a lot of it does get lost in translation, or in fact, it's not even translation, it's just two different languages. And so they're missing each other.
Completely,
Yeah,
right.
they are. Yeah, and it's not actually not that hard, but if you're not talking their language, so I think someone like you who can do that translation is brilliant and is of value big time for that to happen. But I also think the same as well as between employees and leaders
For
and
sure.
that translation, or a business and customers in the translation definitely happens all the time or needs to happen and doesn't always happen very well at all. Yeah. Hey, I also see you've got a book called The Impact Engine. Is that right?
Yep, the impact engine. Yep, I finally got this book out of me. It took me as long as I've had this company, and it's funny because a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, talked about writing a book at the same time I did, and I now joke that his 10-year birthday for the book was the year my book came out. So for 10 years, more than 10, 11 years now, which is as many years as I've had this company, we had been talking about the idea of writing a book and the things we're really passionate about and helping other people, and he knocked it out in a couple of months, and I took a decade to do it, but it is definitely a journey that I'm glad I went on because I have so many examples and stories and case studies of what success looks like and cautionary tales when it
Mm.
didn't go so well that I share in the book. And I really wanted to be absolutely sure that the book I wrote I could say the things I needed to say and feel so confident that it was the truth and would work for everybody and not just like, well, only if you're in this kind of organization or only if you have this scenario. And we have had a 100% success rate in 11 years of this business with our clients, with our students, with our own work. If you do it, it works. And so I'm very proud of being able to say that now, but it took actually all that time. So I guess it was a labor of love, but everything comes in time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the PMO side of things, you can apply that to any kind of industry. It doesn't have to be
Mhm.
just tech. You know how you said when you were studying, there was, I think you said three females in the courses?
I was one of 4, yeah, so in our
One of four.
graduating class, right, and I would
Yeah.
it's funny because I would walk in the room and they would say, "I don't think you're in the right room," because I stuck out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
You meet with my wild hair and yeah, I was only there were only 4 of us in our graduating class for computer science that year.
Yeah. So I was going to, that's the reason I'm going to ask you the question now is that today, has that changed the numbers? In other words, do we find that there's a better balance nowadays or and even in the PMO space as well, does or the business transformation office, whatever you want to call it, do
Mhm.
we also see now that there are more women going into those roles?
Mm. Yeah, for sure. So in technology, we definitely have more women. I don't think that, I guess it depends on where you are, anywhere around the world, or what field you're in specifically in technology. We definitely have more women, but not, I don't think it's 50-50 yet, for sure. And in the PMO and business transformation space, it's really interesting because it really is dependent upon the industry you're in and where you are in the world. For example, in the US and I would say all of North America and in Europe, just anecdotally from the students we have in our programs, it's about, I would say 50-50 men and women. And though in I would say certain industries, for example, I spent a lot of time supporting people in the Middle East and speaking at conferences in the Middle East, and I would say it's definitely not 50-50 there. However, for example, in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, for example, they're doing a lot to promote creating more balance, more opportunities for women, and really raising up female voices in their organizations. And it's a part of their 2030 vision. So I'm seeing a lot of improvement there and a lot of support and progress. But I think it really just depends on where you are in the world, but I have been told before, and it means so much to me that I've become an inspiration for some women that are in this space and giving them a voice and a platform. And we give plenty of opportunities for people to speak on stages that maybe wouldn't have an opportunity otherwise. So we're trying to do our part, I think for sure.
Yeah, and we've seen STEM coming
Mhm.
along as well, and I think that's helping things definitely for the industry as well. I think it's a great thing. So, yeah, if you're a listener right now and you're thinking about where do you go into what industry and things like that, we're going to encourage you to really go after your passion. Talking about passion here, Laura, I know you talked about you sort of fell into technology. Was there another passion you may wanted to have done? Another kind of role?
Um, well, so it's interesting. You mean like outside of the space that I'm in completely?
Yeah, so you said you fell into the technology space because of things that was going on.
Sure.
Was there something else you may have wanted to have done?
Then, no, I think I was just trying to figure out who I wanted to be when I grew up, right? When I was younger. And we didn't have a lot of money when I was growing up. And I really wanted to be in an industry that provided safety and a future. And that just seemed like a safe option, frankly. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And I am still a tech geek at heart, for sure.
Yeah.
But I hide that behind all of the business and transformation work and strategy work. And now I spend most of my personal time in the company creating content, leading my team, and helping C suite executives that are stuck. That's really where I get to spend a lot of my time, which is really fortunate. But we have a fantastic team that's working with all of these transformation people in organizations around the world and really helping them do great work. And then I still stay connected to everybody in a mastermind that we have. That's
Nice.
where all of those PMO and transformation people, I get to hear their challenges every other week, and we get together virtually. We have an online platform where we get together and connect. And that's where I'm really trying to stay connected to the people that are doing that hard work, my heroes, if you will, and really help them with the leadership competencies, right? Like how do they say the right things, have the executive presence, present in a compelling way to make a case for something and really help to get out of the more tactical role of managing projects and really become business leaders
Yep.
that are really important strategic assets for the organization. So that's where I get to spend my time, which I absolutely love.
Yeah, and I think it's very important for even for anybody who's listening to this podcast, any role that they're doing, that they do stay connected with the industry, stay connected with others as well, to learn and grow from each other too. It's because things are changing so quick. We need to stay above on what's going on. The thing I was going to ask you was from a project management perspective, program
Mhm,
management perspective. When you are a manager, you have a title and you have people
mhm,
working for you and you're paying and they go off and do things. But I think sometimes from a project management or program management perspective, it's harder. Why? Because the resources may not be working for you, but they have a dotted line, a matrix kind of scenario, and they come into the project to help out as a resource. What are you noticing about leadership and project management and how I think it's harder? What are your thoughts on that?
oh, for sure. Right? You don't have the authority. And that's why we spend so much time helping. project managers and PMO leaders and all of these, what we call delivery leaders, right? Inside the impact engine, we don't refer to them with any of those specific titles, and we just call everyone delivery leaders because they're responsible for delivery of the organization strategy, of the client projects, but it's not necessarily tied to a certain role. But most, not all, but most of the people in those roles, you're right, are matrixed, and so they don't have a team directly reporting to them necessarily, and still have to be able to influence others to create change, right? It's really all about leading people through the change process, whatever that change is. And so everything that we do, and it's really prevalent in the impact engine, is organizational change management techniques being woven throughout all of the things we teach and all of the techniques that we use, from the obvious change management techniques, people change management techniques, to the less obvious in how you communicate and how your presence you have with the executives and how you present back to your executives, how you ask the right questions and at what points in the process, and then keep going back to them, right? So there's a lot of techniques that we use that are really all about people and change, because you have change, you have people, right? Like there's very few changes that are happening that don't have and don't require some kind of ability to influence others. So I would say that these roles are among the hardest in an organization because of that, but also among the most important.
Mm.
Because if you want change done, it has to be done through people, through some kind of mechanism, some kind of approach, an implementation approach, whether you call it waterfall project management or whatever else you call it, it doesn't matter. It's how you bring people through change to create a unique result or improve a product or change or implement a service. So I do think it's a really powerful place to be. And it takes a certain kind of personality, I would say. Although there's all different kinds of personalities in the project space, you gotta have some strength behind you because you're gonna be asking people to do things that they may not want to do, and it is so important that how to ask them, how to bring them with you through the change process, how to do change with them instead of to them, and it's even harder when you don't have any formal authority over the people that you're asking to change.
And I think the key word that you use there a few times is influence. That's what it is. And it's about you influencing to create the change, which is a great way to actually do it and pull it together. Now, we've already talked a little bit about your leadership and about your sort of background, but how did you actually get into leadership yourself?
Well, I think it just came with the territory. So when you're the person that sees how something can work and you're inspired by that, I'm a very passionate person. I'm very excited about things. I love making things happen. I love, and I think I've always loved bringing people together to solve a problem. And so some people will say, well, leadership is something you're born with, or it's not, or I'm not sure about that. I just know that I have certainly been a troublemaker since I was 2 years old. My parents used to call me Mother Laura, and it was because my sister was born and I was telling them all the things they were doing wrong, like putting her bassinet too close to the edge of the table or something like that. So I've been seeing ways that things can improve my whole life. And it really, for me, was just, and I know that there's a lot of people that will relate to this. We're the ones that go grab the whiteboard marker and go up to the whiteboard and say, let's go solve a problem. I would say maybe that's the natural or the instinctual leadership. We just want to get people together to figure out how to solve something, make something work better, and help people, I think, frankly. And so for me, it's just always been there, and never wanting to take no for an answer and always wanting to help people solve problems. I think it comes with the territory. So I don't know if there was ever like a now I'm a leader, right? And many of the times I've been a leader, it wasn't by title, it was by just how I operated.
Mm.
And I don't think you have to have a specific title or have a bunch of people reporting to you to be considered a leader. I think it's in how you behave and who you are, not the title you have.
I like it what you said too is about the way you operate.
Mhm.
Yeah, you can leadership is leadership, management is a title, but the way
Right.
you operate and the way you do it, and it's actually I think that people don't care what your title is and who you are, but they will
Mhm.
care the way you make them feel, and that's
Mhm.
by the way you operate, the way you do
Mhm.
things, and I think where you make the mark of a true leader. Mm.
For sure.
Now, you and I probably have got some favorite leaders in our life and our careers and things like that. So, who's your favorite leader? And now, this person could be alive or from history, and why?
Oh, so I think about this a lot because I get this question from time to time. And it's really interesting because there's two ways that I think about it that immediately come to mind. I have a busy mind. So I have multiple things that come to mind right at the same time. And when somebody asks that question, two things happen. I have all of these flash moments of different leaders that taught me a thing, right? One of my secrets to success has been to learn from others. And I remember so many different scenarios in organizations in different time periods where I was stuck and I was having trouble solving a problem. And I would look to mentors, formal or informal, and they would teach me something. And that thing sticks with me. So if you said, for example, and this is one thing we were talking about women in tech and creating more balance with women in project management. I specifically had a female leader that said to me, Laura, remember how you feel right now and make sure you never let someone else feel that way. And what she was talking about is I was in an organization that was very relationship based, but it wasn't the men that were holding me back, it was the women. And many women find that to be true.
Yeah.
And she was the most senior leader in this organization. And she was the only one in the top ranks that was a female. And people would say all of these horrible things about her. But it turns out she was one of the most kind and caring people I had ever met and was doing a fraction of what the guys were. But she was being treated differently. And I was having some same challenges. And so she said, your job is to make sure that no other female ever feels this way and to reach behind you and bring other women along on your journey. So when I think about that particular concept or that kind of area, that's what I think about. But I have other stories in the book, for example, of a male leader that taught me something, taught me how to be patient in a time when I was so frustrated, things were moving so slowly. So it's interesting because there's no one leader. There's a ton of lessons learned that pop into my mind based on the scenario that I'm in that moment that is like, "Oh, that was a leadership moment I will never forget." And, "Oh,
Yeah.
there's another leadership moment." So there's no one person, but there's actually another side to this that also pops into my head at the same time. And if you look at the dedication in the Impact Engine book, the leader that I talk about there in the dedication is the reader. Right? Like, and who I am inspired by regularly through our mastermind, through our clients, through people that are going through our impact engine system training and implementation program, all the people that the thousands and thousands of people that read our newsletter and listen to the podcast that we have, that's the person that inspires me in that because they're doing the hard work and nobody knows who they are, right?
Yeah.
Like we've built a pretty big brand. I've built a big brand in my industry. But it's not about me. That brand is a representation of the people that I serve. They're the ones that inspire me to work harder and probably work too much and do a lot of things for them because they're the unsung heroes in organizations like you're talking about. They're the ones without influence. They're the ones without somebody that's necessarily in a lot of organizations, people aren't supporting them. People don't understand the value they bring to the table. They're stuck, they're frustrated, they're overwhelmed, and all of them are trying so hard to do a good job and just can't sometimes. Or do they just don't get the support or they just feel misunderstood. That's probably that role, that person that some people say like the avatar, the
Yeah.
representation of that person is what drives me to do everything I do in my company. And so I would say the most inspiring is them, the people doing the hard work.
And you can tell that does inspire you because your energy when you're talking about it is
Yeah.
so strong and passionate about it as well. Going back to your comment before about what some of the women like to others as well, it's really quite interesting how that happens in a lot of organizations. And
Mhm,
like, why? I mean, there was a leader that we had, very senior, and she
mhm,
was not nice at all to people.
mm,
Very. And I'm like, but why? You've got the talent, everything in the sense of everything you do. It was just the package that was fantastic, but except for this piece that was missing. And I'm
mhm,
like, at the end of the day, there was a lot of complaints about that person and the way they are and the way they, as going back to your words, they operated. And they didn't
right,
operate in a very, very good way. And
mhm,
so I'm like, come on. And it's sad to see it happening at times. Yeah, I'm
yeah.
not sure why it happens.
Well, and, frankly, it could be many things, and obviously, I don't know this person, but I can tell you that for many women have told me that they feel that there are fewer seats at the top, and therefore they have to put on a certain persona
Mm.
or are constantly feeling like they are under duress and in a much more stressful place to even lead. They can't lead the way that their male colleagues can, and they don't have as much confidence or comfort in the position they're in because there are so few seats at the top. And I think that's such a shame. That is even a mindset that people have, but for many people, that's their reality. So it could be that if you met that person on the street or in a cafe, that you would get a totally different personality that isn't feeling so constantly under stress or threatened in their role. So I know that that's one thing that I've heard from a lot of people, and it's unfortunate. And it very well could be that her situation is like mine was sometimes, where it was the women in the organization constantly holding me back, not the men.
Yep.
I've been very fortunate both inside organizations. Yeah, like some of my early bosses were men, and they would jokingly say, "I'll be working for you someday, so I'm just going to get out of your way." Right? So, which was great. It was like they were like, "Listen, I'm gonna stand over here, you let me know what you need," right? Because I was a very driven change leader early in my career, and so, like, "This is what we need to do, this is how we need to do it, let's just go." They were like, "Okay, I'll be over here, you let me know when you need me, I've got your back, but I'm gonna get out of the way." So that was cool. But then other times even in since I've had my company, many of the male thought leaders in my space supported me very early in my career. For example, one of my dear, dear friends, the only endorsement I have on the outside of my book is this fellow named Lee Lambert, who has 50 years in the project management space and speaks all over the world and is a PMI fellow for the Project Management Institute. He is the grandfather of project management. Many people think of him that way, right? And he has been a friend and a supporter of mine from back when I was inside organizations and frankly let me stand on his shoulders, if you will, as did many other men in this space as I was building my company and making sure to get the word out about what we were doing and the support we needed for big events we were doing, et cetera. So, and I had Mark Price Perry, another big name in this space, who retired and passed the torch to me on my podcast, I guess episode 9. So it's been a while now, a few years. But there's been a lot of male colleagues in this space that are some of my dearest friends and have been really huge supporters of me. And there aren't that many women in this space in this particular role. And so I'm trying to support those that are in this space. But frankly, I support everybody that's trying to get their voice out and trying to help and support this community because I think that this community needs a little help, right? So
Sure.
they're all trying to do really good work and they are the unsung heroes in organizations. So if we can help these delivery leaders instead of being competition, for example, many of the people that you'd consider to be my direct competition in this space, we partner together, we work together, we founded the International PMO Day. We've done all kinds of things like that to show the industry that we can do it differently and we can do it better. And we're really here in service of the community.
Excellent. Well, I can't believe our time's flying, but this has been great conversation. So
Thank you.
the title of the show is called Leadership is Changing. When I say that title, that statement, what does that mean for Laura?
Mm. Leadership is changing. Well, what I think of is 2 things. Again, lots of thoughts running around. One, in some respects, I don't think it's changing at all. The same things from the history of humankind that worked then work now, meaning you have to have an internal strength, you have to have confidence in yourself, and you have to be able to lead people on a journey, whatever that journey looks like. So for me, though, I think there's something else. And it's really interesting. I'd never heard of this before until a friend had explained it to me. It's not just about the person you say that is the thought leader or the idea person or the first person to come up with a thing and says, "Follow me." Another interesting concept. Have you ever heard of the first follower concept? There was a TEDx done about it. This happened to me when a friend of mine who we started a nonprofit organization called Project Management for Change. Well, it was all based on this idea of bringing project management to nonprofit community, local nonprofits in your local community that didn't have the resources to hire project managers, but they obviously need to get their mission critical objectives done, but they didn't know that there was this thing called project management that could help them, right? And so we had this wonderful idea. And he literally stood up on a bar stool at this event we were at and said, "I've got this idea and I want to bring all of you with me." And it was really cool. We created this thing called the Project Management Day of Service, which brings together nonprofits and project managers and communities around the world. And it's all volunteer work. And even the organization we run is all volunteer. But what it took was somebody saying, "I'm going to help you with that."
Hmm.
And because he's the idea guy, brilliant, one of my closest friends, his name's Kendall Lott, and he had this great idea, and I was so inspired by it that I said, "I'm going to help you do this." And then we together, him as the leader and me as the first follower, created this really cool thing. And then shortly thereafter, our friend Mike Hannon joined and many others, and we built this whole volunteer organization that couldn't have happened if somebody hadn't first said, "I'm gonna help you with that,"
Yep.
right? So I think there's more acknowledgement now with when leadership is changing. I think there's the same things that have always worked about how we take care of others, bring others with us, and inspire others to an action. But that first follower, I think, has been underrated in the past and now is something that people are paying more attention to. So for me, that's what I think is that we cannot forget the important role in being those early followers that help make, something that might seem like a crazy idea happen, right? So it's not just what you know, it's what you do with what you know, and it's how you apply that knowledge to go make an impact. And that's what really matters for me. So I think that's what I think when I hear leadership is changing is that it's about the community of people you bring together and those that are willing to go on that journey that are just as important as the person that has the great idea.
Yep. I think about 10 years ago, this video came out and
Yeah.
people talked about it was a rave. I don't know if you see it, the
Oh,
guy
yeah.
rolling down the hill. And people were
Yep.
going, "Oh, look at that. That's the leader guy." And I went, "No, I think the leader is the one that followed them afterwards." They went, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, because there could have been just a guy rolling down the hill, what do you do?" But
Mhm.
then the others started to follow, and it was those others who were taking leadership to actually follow that person. So it's that analogy you just talked about is really,
Yeah,
really
and
good.
there's a TEDx about it now where they show that video and talk about that
Nice.
exact thing. So I think it's really, really cool. So you can look up First Follower and TEDx if any of your audience wants to see somebody explain that concept. But you're exactly right. That's what the case he was making. And so then when my friend Kendall shared it with me, I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's exactly right. I'm often the one that is I've got this idea, let's go." But it's the people that come with me that make it happen, and so here I was, the first follower in his wild idea, and it turns out that it changed the world.
Excellent. Yeah, really good.
Yeah.
Hey, we tend to be living in a world whereby it seems to be getting faster and faster. Technology is driving a lot of this.
Sure.
Data, social, business, all those different areas as well. What should a leader do, or how does a leader become successful in a fast paced, ever changing world?
So I think it's interesting because as AI becomes more advanced and I've had a lot of people like now in the project management space, people are talking about AI and technology disruption and getting everyone all excited about it. To me, it's like, at least in my adult years, technology's always been a thing that has been around, right? And that's more digital technology but technology is really, if you take a big step back, it's really just how you use tools, if you will, to solve problems, right? And that's what technology was before technology was as we think of it today, right? It was just the way that we solve problems using tools. And so a lot of people get scared, oh, AI is going to take my job or things aren't going to be the same. And I think that is the golden opportunity for true leadership to shine. Because the more we can rely on technology to solve the simpler problems and for example, let take the data and turn it into information, right? Let's take the all the numbers and everything and turn it into something we can use to actually make educated and informed decisions. Great that we have technology for that so that the people can focus on leading others through change and building relationships and asking better questions and focusing on stakeholder engagement and those are the skills that AI can't do for us and no technology can, at least not yet, right? So I think that's the golden opportunity. And we're going into an age where technology is going to take all of the administrative box checking, overhead type tasks that people have traditionally had to do and turn that into things that we no longer have to worry about putting a person on because AI will take care of all of that. And instead, we can focus our energy on all of the people stuff because that's where the heart of change really happens, obviously, because change is about people and about causing something to happen to people or with people if you're doing it right. Right. So why don't we do it right? Right. Now we're being given an opportunity. So I think the people that can make that shift from focusing on the administrative stuff to focusing on the true leadership behaviors, I think they're the ones that are going to be in the future workforce.
Yep. And then I think organizations need people like you, the translator, who can translate and just what you're
Hmm.
talking about before, right? Technology, if you go back and think about it, that was you said that with your hands as well. I know the listeners
Yeah.
can't see this, but it was about stepping back. Technology is really using tools to help solve problems.
Right.
That's what
Right.
the translate. That's what a lot of people, because a lot of people, there's a lot of noise out there, and a lot of people
Mhm.
get confused and wound up and things like that. But I think by having someone like you on board, just cut the noise out and help people in their thinking and understanding is valuable, which is really good. So well done. Mm.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Now, you and I have been talking about leadership from a lens of from a leader's perspective, but if we change lens and start thinking about employees, what are
Mhm.
you seeing out there in the industry today? Are employees' expectations of leaders changed?
I think so. I'm certainly no expert on this, but what I am seeing anecdotally and what I hear and what I read is that there's a lot of people have more opportunities than they used to have.
Mm,
Right? People don't go to a company and stay there for their entire careers as much as they used to, right? And so I think what has really changed from the perspective of the employee is choice. They have a lot more choices now. And I think society as a whole, no matter where you are in society and what your experience or your background is, there are more choices in today's world. And I think that means that leadership and your actual leadership skills are going to be even more important because you can't just rely on, well, I'm paying you as a reason for people to show up anymore, right? Employees are expecting to be given opportunities to grow, to thrive, to try new things, to feel cared for, to be intellectually challenged, but not too much, right?
mm,
We're seeing an interesting balance of like later generations, right? It's like, give me everything I want, give me all the autonomy in the world. And oh, by the way, so many organizations are went virtual in 2020 and haven't gone back. But it's interesting that some companies, for example, I just heard that Amazon is actually asking everyone to come back into the office 5 days a week, and so it's interesting what's happening with that because I think what they're gonna find, and maybe this was intentional, is what I think, is that this is a way to do layoffs without doing layoffs, right?
yeah.
This is a
Natural
way
attrition.
to, yes, to support attrition, to say, "Okay, well, you have to come back in the office." So all of you that move to different states or move to somewhere where there is no office, well, so I think that's exactly. So I think there's a lot of that going on right now in the industry, is that it might be looking like it's for one reason when maybe it's for another. But I do think that for the employee, they have a different world that they're living in now in 2024 and beyond that gives them more choice. And so leaders need to know that those people have more choices and do more to truly be a leader and support your people.
Yeah. I like what you said as well about the Amazon example, because I did an episode on the Ask Dennis episode the other day, and it was about working from the office versus working from home, and
Mhm.
where does productivity really truly flourish? And the reason being is the New Zealand government's just announced that all public servants must now come back to the office and not work from home.
Interesting.
But there's been surveys of late or over the last couple of years done whereby people are going, productivity, where they're seeing the biggest productivity is when it's a hybrid situation, a little bit at
Mm,
home and a little bit at the office. But
mm.
everyone acknowledges that the in-person, face-to-face stuff, you can't beat it. That is
Right.
that's where a lot of collaboration happens, and so that's gonna happen. But it's actually gonna be very interesting to see companies try and bring people back, because there's so much pizza you can eat, right? When you try and entice people to come back and have
Right.
pizzas. Yeah, there's so much you can do in that. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see where it all goes.
Yeah, well, there's one thing that, I wanna comment on with that because I think you're right. There's nothing, again, it's all about people. There's nothing that replaces being able to physically be in the same room with someone. I see that when I'm on stages, when I was doing virtual keynotes versus in-person keynotes, and being able to truly connect with an audience and be there in their presence and help inspire them to action. So I get that completely. At the same time, I think that a lot of people get overstimulated with all of the in the office stuff, the noise, the fact that they don't have offices that they can close a door. Some people just don't operate well in that environment. So, for our leaders listening, if they have the ability to create flexibility so that you get the peopling when you need it, but then you get the time to not people and actually be productive when you need that as well. I think that's where the organizations are going to find their best balance and their best productivity is giving people a little bit of both.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where it was going as well as in that episode was there's no one size fits all. And so we're going to have some flexibility as well. But you know what? If it makes sense and it works, then
Mhm.
don't be dumb and be blind to it. Be a little bit smart about it. It's also, I think there's also the other side of the spectrum whereby there is a group of people who are manipulating the whole scenario too, right?
Mm,
So, but that's going
mhm.
to be in anything we do in life. There's always going to be,
Anything.
yeah,
Right.
anything at all. Yeah, definitely. Laura, if I was to get you to get your crystal ball out now and think about the future, where do you see leadership being in 5 years?
So I think that our whole industry is future predictors. That's literally, I think, in our job title, our at least job description, right? Our whole industry, where our job is to help people predict the future and figure out when this project's going to finish and how the company's going to be able to deliver their strategy. So I think that for me, being the future predictor in this space, I think that it's really going to just leadership is going to be 100% based on your ability to bring people with them through the change process and do so in a way that doesn't have them kicking and screaming, that really has them coming with you. I think change management, organizational change management will be 100% focused on how do you engage with people? How do you influence them? How do you make them feel a part of the process? And we refer to the people in our community as impact drivers, and so what I'm often saying to them is sometime to navigate, you need to be in the passenger seat, not always driving. So it's not about always being behind the wheel and having to take control and take charge. It's really great if you can be what we call the strategy navigator for the organization and sit in that passenger seat and guide and let your stakeholders be the ones in the driver's seat leading the change. So to me, I think we're just getting more and more in that direction where the leader is not necessarily a follower per se, but just someone that knows how to guide others on a journey through change in a way that feels like the person or people going through the change are empowered and have that sense of ownership. People are not resistant to change, they are resistant to having change done to them.
To them, yeah.
So the more you can let them own the change and have some autonomy and some control over their future, the better off we'll all be. So that's where I see it going, is just continuing down that path.
Excellent. Laura, it's been awesome talking to you today. Hey, if our listeners are wanting to get hold of you, where should they go?
Well, the best place to find me where I am all the time is on LinkedIn. So you can just find me. It's linkedin.com/in/, Laura Barnard, all together. And I also then hang out a lot on PMOstrategies.com. We also have a podcast called the PMO Strategies Podcast. And then, of course, if they're interested in learning about how we teach others to accelerate the delivery of the organization's strategy, we have our new book, The Impact Engine. So you can find that in all major retailers worldwide, as well as impactenginebook.com.
Excellent. Laura, it's been a fascinating discussion. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me here. And thank you to your audience, the unsung heroes doing the hard work in organizations to lead people on that change journey. So thank you to all of you for the hard work you do.
Excellent. Well, there you go, listeners. If you can translate things like tech into business or helping each other out, that's going to be a great thing too. But do you wish that you had a person like Laura when you were you or when you are needing it right now? Just imagine if you had a leader around you that actually can influence you to help you create change. Because you see, that ability to influence and create change is really important. But the way you operate is going to be the thing that's going to really count. So be smart about it. Think about it, what you're wanting to do. Are you that impact driver? Are you the person in the passenger seat and actually being guided by others to help you navigate change going forward? Hey, it's always a pleasure being with you. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, bye for now.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leadership is Changing with your host, Dennis Giannoutsas. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change, inspiring executives and leaders to adapt and lead a bigger game in a fast-moving world.